Welcome to the Becoming a Principal podcast, a podcast for aspiring educational leaders. I'm Jordan, and I'm usually with Matt, but Matt is not with me today. We decided to try something a little bit different on the podcast, which was a solo podcast episode. So essentially, we're just talking to ourselves. We knew this would be a challenge, but here we go. We also decided that the topic for our solo podcast episodes, our first solo podcast episodes, would be a reflection on our first year in new leadership roles. So as you know, if you've been listening prior, or maybe you don't know, I've completed my first year as a high school principal. Yes, it was amazing, but there were many lessons to be learned, lessons that I will continue to learn, and things that I will continue to reflect on. Before I dive into some of those reflections, I want to open with some gratitude. I'm extremely lucky to be part of a family that allows me to pursue my professional goals. If not for them, there's no chance I'd even be speaking on something like this, let alone, hold the positions that I've held in previous years, especially. I'm very grateful for all that they provide, from my immediate family to my extended family. Very grateful and blessed. In addition to them, I'm very lucky to work in an environment, or have worked in an environment with so many amazing champions for education that have students at the center, student learning as a focus, and then also supporting professional goals of their employees, which I am trying to do as payback for all that has been given to me. So let's start with some reflecting. I was tasked with being the principal of a school with close to 2,000 students, high school, and it's a huge responsibility that I do not take lightly. What we haven't mentioned much on the podcast prior, but I'm going to mention now, is that we work in a Catholic school. We're very fortunate to do so. We call it the enduring gift, and it truly is. How lucky are we to be bonded together through our faith and be able to approach every situation we encounter, whether it be curriculum, pedagogy, student discipline, approach to initiatives, through a Catholic lens. It truly is a blessing and a responsibility that I obviously do not take lightly. So I wanted to share that before we begin sort of my formal reflection here. So yeah, staff of over about 100, students close to 2,000 students roughly, a little bit less than that. And my goal, really, the focus of this reflection is not to talk about how I met the objectives, or this school, we met the objectives and aligned practices with the vision and mission of our school board and meeting ministry mandates. The purpose of this is really to look at leadership practices that I tried to instill, and kind of just reflecting to see how if I really kept my priorities in that regard, and was able to make any sort of headway or stay true to myself and what I was hoping to accomplish in that time during my first year as principal. So in a school that size, sure, the principal might be important, but I knew from the beginning of this assignment that the most important people are the staff, for my position anyway. If the principal or administration takes care of the staff will take care of the students. I wanted to maintain that belief from the beginning to the end, and I can say that I definitely did do that. So I thought when I stepped into the role that my job again was to take care of the staff. Some might agree to disagree, but that was definitely a priority for me going into this role. You could also misunderstand that as allowing staff or educators to do as they please, but again, that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is taking care of the staff, which means supporting them, believing that their intentions are good. Again, always assuming positive intent when it comes to relations with staff, and supporting their interests as it relates to moving things forward or trying new things. That's not to say that in the right setting or context or when it's necessary, you aren't challenging staff on certain issues. But again, wanted to create that culture where the staff felt like they were cared for. That was a priority for me. To extend that even further, I mentioned that we are part of a Catholic school and a Catholic school system, and the principal should be the faith leader of that school. Even though at the secondary school setting, we have chaplains who are responsible for being spiritual leaders in the school, the principal of a Catholic school should be a spiritual faith leader as well. So one of my goals for the school year was to just be pastoral in nature in my role, in all my interactions. Did I achieve that? Sometimes. Not all the time, that's for sure. There's a few instances where I probably didn't. I acted too quick, spoke too quick, wrote an email back too quick, that didn't, that maybe wouldn't embody gospel values perfectly. But that's always the goal. That's the what we're striving for, what I'm striving for, to be pastoral in my role. So that could be formally, that could be through like weekly emails and updates. It could be at certain times, the liturgical calendar that I'm writing an email to staff or commenting on things as they come up throughout the school year. But most importantly, I wanted it to be in my day-to-day interactions and how I treat others, treating others as I would like to be treated. Obviously, the golden rule. And I think for the most part, I did an okay job of that. But this was my priority. So there's the two main ones, was really try and take care of the staff so that they will be able to take care of the students and provide for them what they need, really serve them in a way that will help them serve our community, because at the end of the day, that's who serves the community. And then also to be pastoral in nature in my role, not to jump to conclusions too quick, not to judge unfairly or harshly, to hear all sides, to hear perspectives, and to just be a good pastoral leader in our school. Again, was a big priority for me. In addition to those two, I really wanted to try and communicate effectively to staff and be as transparent as possible. So Matt and I have talked about this concept before of radical transparency, and I will do that to the extent possible. And I've tried to do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But again, if it borders on confidentiality, obviously we're not going to be, doing that. But where I can be transparent, I really try to be. And some people aren't used to that approach. And maybe I wasn't either in terms of my dealings with my past administrators, for sure. And that was maybe it's a generational thing, recognizing that I'm a millennial and maybe I see things a little bit differently than maybe some of my previous leaders have. Are there things that come up that we didn't communicate effectively or quickly? Yeah, absolutely. I took some, I don't say, I didn't take necessarily criticism, but I learned definitely some lessons on when to communicate earlier, the better. Early and often is what I keep telling myself. And sometimes I still miss the mark. And I think the reason I have missed the mark in some cases is that I was waiting for the most accurate information before I shared anything, which is a good practice in most cases, but sometimes you need to get ahead of it as well and just be open that there might be more information forthcoming. Another goal that I sort of had for myself as we started the school year was creating a culture where people aren't afraid to share their thinking. Based on the number of people that have been sharing their thinking with me, I think I did an okay job with that. I felt that a goal of mine was to create the conditions where people feel that they could say something that might not sit well with me, but still say it anyway because I needed to hear it. I definitely received some of those, and I just told myself not to take anything personally at all and just reflect on it at face value. So I think one skill that I was trying to improve for myself as a leader is just to not judge any commentary that came into my inbox, not to judge the person that sent it, not even to necessarily judge the way with which it was written or the way in which it was communicated to me. Really leave that out of it, and to just read the facts or the sentiment or the message that was being conveyed to me. So if for some reason someone would write back something that they wanted to see change or improve, and maybe they sent it as an all users email, maybe they sent it just directly to me, I tried to separate the venue or the avenue or the way or maybe the tone, some people might say, of what was being said and evaluate what was actually being said and just judge the commentary, not the person. And then have some discussion on that commentary and decide whether, is this valid? Should we explore this further? If someone is saying it, surely other people are thinking it. And just to be easy on myself with accepting those things as like a personal criticism, because I think there are times where I've definitely done that. And I notice for myself when I start to do that and really I can get down on myself when I start to take things very personal, when really the best answer to that, or the best way to move things forward, is just evaluate what's being said, take the information, and decide next steps. Be very kind of pragmatic about it, which sometimes I think when I'm not operating on all cylinders, I can go into the lower level of the way I operate, which is being reactive and not taking a more rational approach. So I really tried to maintain that throughout the year. Did I slip? Yes, sometimes here and there for sure, with some quick replies instead of reading the message thoroughly and fully and evaluating it for the message itself. And but I think there are times where I've allowed that, if you want to, rebuttal or alternative viewpoint to come through, and accept it instead of fight it. And I think that has been a pretty hard leadership skill to implement, but it's something that I'm working on, and I think all leaders could work on for sure. And it definitely bears some fruit in allowing people to voice how they feel. So yeah, that's one thing I've definitely tried to create, is where a culture where people feel that they can share without, maybe being like reprimanded or judged harshly. And I think I've done an okay job of that. And I want to, again, keep that in my mind as I head towards my next year as a principal. The last thing that I'm going to mention is just my own team. So in a high school setting with a student population close to 2,000, yes, you have over 100 teaching staff, between 10 and 20 support staff, 10 plus administrative assistants. There's lots of custodians, lots of different employee groups. A really important aspect of the school functioning well is the actual admin team and how they operate and connect with one another, and the kind of vibe that they have. I know it's a millennial thing to say, but it's true. There's a vibe that people can bring to a school and the way in which they operate, and then also making sure that is a very functional working group, the admin team. And again, kind of in a smaller scale, but really important scale, in really important sense, is that in that group, people feel that they can be heard and share and know that what they're saying means something, actually means a lot, with the principal and as a working group, that we are not always have to be on the same page. We don't have to always be on the same page. I realize that early on. It doesn't have to be every time, but especially when we're starting to discuss ideas. But once we land on something, we do need to be together and see something through. And if something's not working, again, it's important that we decide, hey, what's going to be our timeline on this? After 2 weeks, do we reconvene? Is it after a week? Do we reconvene and see kind of how we're doing? Or is it just whenever? If this sounds like something that's going to work out well, fine. But if you guys are noticing anything that's, not really going the way it should, feel free to say so. I think that on the team we had this past year, our group was not afraid at all to share with each other how we felt. At least that's how I see it. I could be wrong if you asked one of them, but hopefully they see that they had a voice that was obviously listened to and supported. And that's the goal. Again, I always say that's the goal. I think actually one of my team members shared it's an aspirational goal, but sometimes we fall short. That's okay, but we're still going to aspire to meet that as our goal, as our target. So again, a good functioning admin team can really help keep the school balanced, and that was a goal for myself as well. The other thing I was trying to balance as a new leader was not having all the answers for everyone, or not having to be the answer for everyone in every situation. And I definitely got caught in this sometimes. I was trying to help with different tasks that I probably should have delegated, to be honest, that I didn't do a good job of actioning out. And I was kind of caught in the weeds, so to speak, of doing things that probably weren't high yield for me in my position. Because there's some things that only I can do as the principal. I do need to focus on those for sure. But utilizing the team and delegating and distributed leadership is so important to actually having a school function well. Part of that is with the VPs and with our teachers is that experience. I've learned experience is the best teacher. Second best is learning from others. Someone can tell you a story and you learn from that. But there's nothing like having that experience yourself to lean on and draw from to help you in your next situation. So if it's a angry parent, whatever it is. And honestly, you got to experience it for yourself before you know how to handle the next situation. And we can be prepared. We can read the books. We can do all that stuff. But until you've had more reps of that, it's kind of hard to explain, but you really need to get that experience. So what I mean by that is maybe not bubble wrapping things so much for everyone and letting them kind of feel the weight of a decision or a choice or an angle that they take so that they can reflect for themselves how to approach it next time. And that's not easy to do. Anyone who is a parent would know that with their children. That's not easy to do. That's a skill, actually, where you have to let people experience something for themselves. I mean, if you see something that's going to be going off the rails for sure, and you know you can circumvent it, or you want to give some advice, sure. But people do need to be able to own their own actions and decisions and feel what that is like and how it worked out, and then reflect on those. So as a leader, allowing people to have that experience for themselves without you sort of like lording over it, honestly, it's really not easy to do, especially if you see something, if you can feel something coming. But it is important because people learn from that. The more reps they get, the better they get. So another thing that I kind of kept in focus throughout the year, and I'm going to continue to keep in focus as a leadership practice going forward. All right. So to recap, my goals for this year on a personal leadership level was to be a faith leader, a pastoral person in all my interactions with staff. Obviously, I fell short many times, but that is the goal. And I'm going to continue with that goal because I think it's a good one. I wanted to communicate effectively with staff and be ahead of things as much as possible. I have some ideas of how I'm going to do that going forward. And that's definitely at the forefront of my mind still. So these are things I can probably continually work on. Again, focus on staff, taking care of staff in a lot of different ways. That can mean a lot of different things, whether it's challenging them to try something new, continuing to build trust, build on the trust that we've kind of established in the first year so that people feel that they are supported. Creating a culture where people don't mind sharing their thinking or be able to sort of speak back, so to speak, and share what they're actually feeling without fear of reprisal. I feel like we got somewhere on that. I want to keep that kind of alive. And then with my own team, being able to listen, harness their strengths and support them so that they can shine and affirm them and double down on my belief in them, because it is strong. But I need to keep, if it's not at the forefront of your mind, I think you can lose touch with that. So that's something I want to, again, keep at the forefront of my mind going forward. All in all, I had a wonderful experience in my first year as principal. There were some very challenging things that came my way. But again, when I'm speaking from a faith perspective, very fortunate to be able to lean into our faith as Catholic leaders, Catholic educators, to get through situations, and using that as a basis to support our approach to, again, school-wide initiatives, student discipline, day-to-day interactions with each other in our community. We're so fortunate to have that, and I'm going to continue to lean into that because it's just so strong and so comforting at the same time. So yeah, that's my reflections on my first year. There's more I could say, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Matt has to say, because we're not really sharing these with each other until we post them. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you for listening to the Becoming a Principal podcast. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Becoming a Principal podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.